If you love true stories where brave dogs protect the most innocent among us, don't forget to subscribe to Brave Animals, because today's story, it might just save a life. She opened her lunchbox, and the canine dog went wild. What he found, inside changed everything. At Willow Ridge Elementary, the air always smelled faintly of fresh-cut grass and cafeteria pizza. It was the kind of place where kids felt safe, where parents trusted the locks on the doors and the hearts of the teachers inside. But on a Thursday afternoon in April, something happened that shattered that trust, and it all started with a dog barking at a little girl's lunchbox. Lila Jameson was 7 years old, quiet, polite, and always the last to raise her hand in class. That day she sat under the big oak tree at lunch as she always did. Her lunchbox, pink with glitter unicorns, rested neatly on her lap. Across the yard, a large German shepherd named Brick sat on duty. He belonged to Officer Danielle Ruiz, the school's resource officer, and was part of a new canine pilot program meant to promote safety and comfort. Brix was friendly. Kids hugged him daily. He knew every hallway, every smell, and most days he spent lunch napping in the sun while kids giggled nearby. But not that day. That day, as Lila flipped open the lid to her lunchbox, Brix's ears shot up. Then, he bolted. The teachers nearby barely had time to react before Brix was barking, not playfully, not confusedly, but with furious purpose. His deep growl cut through the laughter on the playground. He lunged toward Lila, placing his body between her and the lunchbox, barking so violently that she dropped it in fear. Kids screamed. One teacher tripped over a bench. Lila began to cry. Officer Ruiz sprinted across the yard. "Brix, heel!" she yelled, but he didn't. His tail stiff, his nose pinned to the small pink container, he barked again, louder this time. Officer Ruiz knelt down and gently pulled the lunchbox toward her. She could see Lila's hands shaking. Inside was a sandwich, apple slices, a juice pouch, a bag of grapes, and something that didn't belong. Ruiz noticed a strange, almost chemical smell coming from the grapes. Brix's nose hovered over them, growling now, not barking. She recognized that behavior. It wasn't fear. It was detection, and it was deadly serious. Inside the nurse's office, Lila sat wrapped in a blanket, holding onto a small plush fox. Her eyes were red. "I didn't do anything," she said quietly. "It was my lunch. My mom made it." Like always, Ruiz crouched next to her. "No one's blaming you, sweetheart. You're not in trouble. But Brix was trying to protect you, and we think he might have saved your life." Upstairs, the principal had already called the local police department. The lunchbox had been sealed in a sterile evidence bag and sent for urgent toxicology testing. Ruiz stayed behind, her gut twisting. She'd seen Brix alert like this once before, during her time in narcotics, when he sniffed out a hidden stash of fentanyl inside a teddy bear. That alert had saved a baby. She feared this one might be worse. By 3:30 p.m., the test results came in. The lab detected a trace amount of pesticide-laced compound in the grapes, enough to cause severe gastrointestinal distress in a child. In high doses, it could have shut down organs. It wasn't an accident. This wasn't food gone bad. It was tampering. Officer Ruiz sat in the principal's office with Detective Mark Ellison, who had just arrived from the county department. She could have gone into shock if she ate that whole bag, he said, scanning the report. "Your dog's got a damn good nose." Ruiz nodded, staring at the photo of the lunchbox, her face unreadable. "Do we think this was aimed at the child?" the principal asked, nervously twisting her necklace. Detective Ellison leaned back. "Too early to say, but someone packed that lunch. Someone who had access to that food." Ruiz looked up. "We need to talk to the mom." Jenna Jameson arrived at the school in a state of panic. Her nurse's scrubs were stained with coffee. Her eyes darted from Ruiz to the principal. "My daughter was almost poisoned? Are you? What the hell is going on?" She collapsed into the chair beside Lila, who hugged her tightly. "I packed her lunch this morning. I do it every morning," Jenna said. "Grapes, sandwich, apples, wait, no. I didn't pack grapes today. I was out of grapes. I gave her trail mix. Everyone in the room froze. Ruiz's voice was calm, measured. You're sure? I'm sure. I even told her she'd have to wait for grapes until I could shop Saturday. That bag wasn't from me. Outside the room, Brick sat quietly, alert, but still. Watching, waiting. That night, after Lila fell asleep at the hospital for observation, Jenna sat in Ruiz's squad car, her voice cracking. I don't have enemies. I don't date. I go to work. I come home. There's no one who would want to hurt her. Ruiz studied her. Anyone ever threaten you at work? A patient's family? A co-worker? Jenna looked away. There was a man. Crawley. His kid came in twice in a month. I reported bruises. He hated that. Said I was ruining his family. Ruiz wrote the name down. We'll look into him. She didn't say what she was thinking. That Crawley's name was already known to the local PD for harassment, for intimidation, even for a prior case involving a school staff member. She looked at Bricks in the rearview mirror. His eyes were fixed on her. He knew. At school the next day, kids avoided the oak tree. The lunch table sat half full. Parents were calling in, some threatening to pull their kids out. Ruiz stood outside the main office, watching Lila arrive in a wheelchair. Just for precaution, the hospital had said. The girl reached into her backpack, pulling out a new lunchbox, purple this time. Bricks barked once. Lila froze. Ruiz was already moving. The air was heavy the next morning at Willow Ridge Elementary, not with rain or weather, but with unease. Whispers floated through the halls. Kids walked to class clutching their lunches tighter than usual. Teachers offered forced smiles and watchful eyes. But it was Bricks who everyone noticed most. The German Shepherd was unusually tense. He paced slowly outside the office, sniffing every backpack, every locker corner, even the hands of nervous first graders. Some of them whispered things like, "That's the dog that saved Lila," while others kept their distance, unsure whether they were witnessing a hero or a hound that had seen something he couldn't unsee. Inside the building, Officer Danielle, Ruiz stood beside Principal Harwood and Detective Mark Ellison as they reviewed security footage once more. The camera outside the cafeteria caught only shadows that morning, blurry outlines, no clear faces. This wasn't someone random, Ellison muttered, rewinding again. They knew how to avoid the cameras. They knew the blind spots. Ruiz crossed her arms. And they knew where the lunchboxes were kept before school started. That's not someone from outside. Harwood cleared her throat. You're not seriously suggesting it's someone on staff? Ruiz didn't flinch. I'm suggesting we don't rule anything out. Lila sat quietly in the nurse's office, her new purple lunchbox unopened. She hadn't eaten breakfast. She was scared. I don't want it, she said softly, pushing it away. What if he barks again? Bricks was curled up nearby, alert. At the sound of her voice, he lifted his head. His ears twitched. His nose quivered slightly, but he stayed silent. I trust him, Lila whispered. I trust him more than grown-ups right now. Ruiz knelt down beside her. He's here to protect you, and he's not going anywhere. You're safe, sweetheart. Lila blinked at her. What if they try again? Ruiz paused, then gave her a calm, firm nod. Then we'll catch them. Later that afternoon, Detective Ellison visited Jenna Jameson's apartment. The modest two-bedroom place sat above a laundromat and smelled faintly of dryer sheets and Lysol. We found nothing suspicious in your kitchen, Jenna, he said. Your hands are clean, literally and figuratively. Jenna sighed in relief, but kept her arms crossed. So it had to be swapped somewhere between home and the cafeteria? We think so, possibly during morning drop-off, maybe even during class lineup. I don't understand. Her voice cracked. Who would want to hurt a child? My child. Ellison lowered his notepad. Sometimes it's not about the child. Sometimes it's about punishing the parent. That hit her like a cold slap. She knew who he meant. Crawley. she said bitterly. Ellison nodded. He's dangerous, and he has money, friends on the school board, people who owe him favors. If he's behind this, he's not doing it alone. Back at the school, Ruiz decided to test a theory. She asked the janitor, Mr. Delman, to open the back supply closet near the cafeteria, the one no one ever really used anymore. Dust fell like snow from the ceiling tiles as he pried the door open. Inside, tucked behind a mop bucket, was a discarded latex glove and a crumpled wrapper. Ruiz picked up the wrapper with gloved hands. It was for a juice box, identical to the one in Lila's lunchbox. "This shouldn't be here," she said aloud. She brought the items to Ellison, who ordered DNA testing. "If we get a match," he said, "we're closing in." The next morning, Lila walked into class with her head slightly higher. Bricks had become her shadow. Ruiz had gotten special permission for him to sit with her during the day, and the school counselor had suggested it might be good for the other kids too, to show them that heroes can come with pause and patience. But just after 10 a.m., the fire alarm went off. It wasn't a drill. As students filed out in confusion, Bricks began pulling hard on his leash. He wasn't headed toward the exits. He was pulling into the building. "Bricks," Ruiz called. "What is it?" The dog stopped in front of the teacher's lounge. He barked once. Then again. Ruiz opened the door slowly. The smell hit her instantly. Chemicals. Something pungent and out of place. In the trash bin, hidden under crumpled paper towels and old coffee cups, was a broken glass vial. "Get the kids outside," Ruiz shouted. "Now." The building was evacuated. Hazmat was called. Whatever the substance had been, it had a similar compound to what was found on Lila's grapes. Someone wasn't just trying to poison lunch. They were escalating. That evening, Ellison called Ruiz with an update. The DNA on the juice wrapper matches a cafeteria worker. Name's Travis Dunn. Background's clean, but his phone records show texts from an unlisted number linked to a burner phone we suspect belongs to Crawley. Ruiz felt her stomach twist. So Crawley paid someone off. Looks that way. And the vial in the lounge? We're still testing it, but my gut says it was another attempt, maybe a scare tactic. We need to bring them both in. They lawyered up this afternoon. Deny everything. Ruiz looked down at Bricks lying at her feet, eyes half closed but ears perked. He'll tell us if they're lying. The next day, Ruiz arranged a quiet sit-down in the empty gymnasium. Travis Dunn sat across from her, his lawyer by his side. Bricks sat a few feet away, calm but watchful. "We don't need tricks," the lawyer warned. He has nothing to say. Ruiz laid down the juice box wrapper, the glove, the photo of the vial. Then she said nothing. Bricks stood up and walked forward. He sniffed Travis's shoes, then his bag, then his hands, and then he barked. Twice. Travis flinched, his face drained of color. "Mr. Dunn," Ruiz said calmly, "dogs don't lie. And this one? He saved a child's life. So tell me, are you the one who put poison in a 7-year-old's grapes?" The room was silent for a long time. Then, Dunn leaned forward, shaking. "I didn't know it was for a kid," he whispered. "I didn't know." To be continued in the next part, the real reason behind the attack, Crawley's shocking motive, and the final move that turns Bricks into a national hero. If you're following this story, hit that subscribe button for Brave Animals. Real stories, real heroes. Sometimes justice has 4 legs and a bark that won't be ignored. Officer Danielle Ruiz had interviewed hundreds of suspects over the years, some angry, some slippery, some completely broken. But Travis Dunn? He was something else. He wasn't hardened. He wasn't evil. He was scared. And that fear told her everything. "I didn't know," he repeated. His fingers clenched so tight the knuckles turned white. "I was told to swap the lunch. I didn't even open it." Ruiz leaned forward across the metal table, her voice steady but firm. "Told by who?" The lawyer beside him cleared his throat. "My client has nothing further to say until charges are filed or a formal agreement is made." Ruiz exhaled slowly. Bricks lay silently at her feet, tail thumping once against the tile. He didn't bark again, but his eyes never left Dunn. Then maybe we should talk about what else you didn't. No, Ruiz said, reaching into her folder. She placed a photo on the table. Lila, in her hospital bed, eyes half closed, holding a stuffed fox to her chest. That's who almost died because of you. Dunn blinked at the photo, then he looked away. Back at Willow Ridge Elementary, the mood was different. Tense, guarded. Parents were watching more closely. Kids were asking questions teachers didn't know how to answer. Lila hadn't returned to class yet, and even the teachers walked in pairs. But there was one bright light in the middle of it all: Brix. Since the day of the incident, he had become a beloved figure on campus. Students would leave little thank you notes on his vest. A fifth grader painted his portrait during art class and hung it by the library. And someone, no one knew who, started leaving dog treats wrapped in napkins at the security office each morning. Even still, Ruiz knew the real battle wasn't over. Crawley was still walking free. That night, Jenna Jameson stood in her kitchen, staring at the TV, which flickered silently with the evening news. Lila slept in the other room, safe, finally eating again. Her backpack had a keychain now, a tiny plush Brix with a badge on its chest, but Jenna's mind wasn't at ease. She looked down at her phone and scrolled through old texts. Crawley had sent her dozens in the past, some polite, others threatening. After she filed the report against him for suspected child abuse at the clinic, he went quiet, until 3 weeks ago. The last message he sent her simply said, "You'll know how it feels soon." She hadn't told the police about that one. Not. Yet at the precinct, Detective Mark Ellison was digging deep. Crawley was a known bully in the community, wealthy, entitled, and shielded by a lawyer network built to intimidate and erase. But something caught his eye in the financial records. "Bingo," he muttered. Ellison called Ruiz. "Get this, Crawley made a large withdrawal from an offshore account 10 days before the lunchbox incident, cash only. That's when Dunn said he got the anonymous payment. Traceable? Not directly, but it ties the timeline together. And here's the twist: Dunn's brother-in-law works as a junior tech assistant at the school. That's how he knew about the camera blind spots." Ruiz leaned back, thinking. "We're building a case, but we need one more thing. Something solid." Meanwhile, Ruiz visited Lila and Jenna that evening with Brix in tow. Lila lit up when she saw him. "Can he stay for a bit?" she asked, her hand still small against the dog's fur. "As long as he likes." Ruiz smiled. They sat together on the porch as the sun began to dip behind the trees. "Do you remember anything about the lunchbox the day it happened?" Ruiz asked gently. Lila paused. "It looked the same, but it was colder." "Colder?" "Yeah. Mom always packs it warm, like the sandwiches warm. But that day, it was super cold, like it just came from a fridge." Ruiz took note. "Do you remember where your backpack was before lunch?" Lila pointed. "I left it outside the classroom while we had music. Everybody did. That was it. Someone had access to the lunchboxes during class, not before school." Ruiz's mind went back to the staff rosters, custodians, aides, and teachers with hallway access, and one name popped out: Calvin Reese, Crawley's cousin, hired 2 months ago as a substitute janitor, and the one man no one had checked yet. The next day, Ruiz requested Calvin Reese come to the school under the pretense of a routine staff review. He arrived smelling faintly of cigarettes and cologne, shirt half-tucked, and confidence written across his smirk. But Brix didn't like him. The second Reese walked into the room, Brix rose to his feet. No bark, no growl, just stillness. "Mr. Reese," Ruiz said casually. "You were working the week of the incident?" "Yeah. Did the morning trash rounds, wiped a few tables, nothing wild." "You ever handle student belongings, lunchboxes?" He shrugged. "Sometimes. If a kid forgets it, I bring it to Lost and Found." Ruiz nodded. "Do you remember bringing in a pink lunchbox?" Reese didn't blink. "Nope." Then Ruiz pulled out her phone. "I have surveillance from the music room hallway that day. And guess who walks by holding a pink lunchbox and a towel?" His smirk dropped. In the silence, Brix took one step forward and barked. Loud, clear, absolute. Reese jumped. Ruiz stood. Calvin Reese, you are under investigation for conspiracy to endanger a minor and attempted poisoning. That night, as the sun set behind the football field, the town of Willow Ridge let out a breath. Crawley had officially been named in the warrant. His money couldn't cover for everything now. Between the financial records, phone pings, and Dunn's testimony under plea bargain, there was no denying it. He orchestrated the attempt on Jenna's daughter because she had stood up for an abused child, and he couldn't stand being told no. Lila returned to school the following Monday. The whole class stood and clapped when she walked in. But it wasn't for her alone. It was for the large, four-legged protector who walked beside her, vest shining in the morning light. Hi, Brix, she whispered, kneeling to pet him. He saved me, she told the class. But he didn't just sniff my lunch. She looked around. He sniffed out the truth. It had been 4 days since Crawley's name was made public. The town of Willow Ridge, once a quiet place where people left their doors unlocked, now buzzed with headlines, police cars, and whispered conversations outside grocery stores. At the heart of it all was a man who'd once walked freely through fundraisers and parent-teacher nights. And now, he was a suspect in the attempted poisoning of a child. But Crawley wasn't the type to go down quietly. Officer Danielle Ruiz stood at her kitchen counter, coffee in hand, files spread across the counter like puzzle pieces. Brix sat by the door, eyes alert, sensing her tension. The phone rang. It was Detective Mark Ellison. He'd lawyered up hard, Ellison said. He's claiming none of this ties back to him. Blaming Reese, blaming Dunn, says they acted alone. Classic coward, Ruiz muttered. Thing is, Ellison continued, his lawyer just filed a restraining order and against you. Claims you're harassing his client. Ruiz let out a dry laugh. He poisoned a child, and I'm the threat? It's intimidation. But get this. He's holding a press conference tomorrow. Public statement, live cameras, wants to clear his name. Ruiz shook her head. No way he does that without a backup plan. And she was right. The next morning, Willow Ridge's town square filled with reporters, cameras, and curious residents. Crawley arrived in a black SUV, flanked by 2 lawyers wearing a navy blue suit and sunglasses. He stepped up to the microphone with all the confidence of a man used to getting away with things. My name is Charles Crawley, he began, and I want to speak directly to the people of this community, my neighbors, my friends, and most importantly, the parents who, like me, want nothing more than safety for their children. Ruiz stood near the back, arms crossed, sunglasses on. She wasn't here to be swayed, she was here to watch. And Brix, beside her, was more alert than ever. His nose twitched. His eyes locked on Crawley. His tail stiffened. Something was off. I'm not a criminal, Crawley said, voice rising. I am a father, and I will not be framed by rogue officers and overzealous detectives with personal vendettas. Boom. The sound wasn't an explosion. It was the shattering of glass. From the second-floor window of a nearby building, a figure had just smashed open the pane and dropped something into the crowd. Chaos erupted. People screamed. Ruiz's instincts kicked in. She yanked her radio, shouting, "Suspicious object, second floor west building, code red." But Brix didn't wait. He bolted through the crowd toward the object now rolling on the pavement. A small metal canister, familiar to anyone trained in chemical response. A tear gas grenade. Ruiz shoved people out of the way. Everyone back. Brix, no. But the dog didn't stop. With a swift lunge, Brix clamped his jaws around the canister and ran toward the fountain in the center of the square. The grenade hissed. He leapt into the water just as the canister erupted, releasing the gas, but contained in the shallow pool, the fumes dissipated with the breeze. People coughed, panicked, but no one was hurt, except Brix. He lay in the fountain, motionless. 10 minutes later, Ruiz sat in the back of the emergency vet unit cradling Brix's soaked fur. His eyes blinked slowly. He was breathing, but barely. He took in some of the gas, the vet said gently. Dogs don't process it like we do. But he's strong. We'll monitor him. Ruiz didn't cry. She'd learned long ago that tears didn't fix anything. But she did whisper into his ear, "You saved them, just like always." Meanwhile, Ellison was already inside the building where the grenade had been dropped. The window led to an office space rented by a private security firm. Guess who had once been a silent investor? Charles Crawley. In the trash bin, they found a discarded glove and a burner phone with recent messages, including one that said, "Drop it during the speech. Make it look like chaos. I'll spin it as a setup." They had him. By nightfall, news. Crews were replaying footage of Bricks leaping into the fountain with the grenade. The image went viral. Hero K9 saves dozens. During tear gas attack at Crawley press event, Ruiz sat outside the vet office, Jenna Jameson beside her. Lila had drawn a crayon picture of Bricks in the fountain, cape and all. "I don't know how to thank you," Jenna said, voice soft. "You already did," Ruiz replied, holding the drawing. "You raised a kid who trusts a dog more than she fears the world. That's rare." Inside, Bricks finally stood on all fours again, tail wagging weakly. The vet smiled. "He's gonna be okay." Ruiz let out the breath she hadn't realized she was holding. The next day, Crawley was arrested. Formal charges: conspiracy to commit child endangerment, obstruction of justice, and terrorism-related public endangerment. His lawyers tried one last bluff in court, but Dunn confessed under oath. Reese flipped with full immunity and turned over voice recordings. The judge didn't hesitate. Crawley's bail was denied. Ruiz walked out of the courthouse that day to a line of reporters. She didn't stop to talk, but Bricks did. He stood at her, sighed proud, his vest now stitched with a new patch. "I bark for the truth." At the next school assembly, Principal Harwood stood on stage with a framed certificate. "Today, we honor one of our bravest, not just because he sniffed out poison, not just because he stopped a dangerous man, but because he reminded us that courage doesn't always look like what you expect." Bricks trotted on stage, tail wagging, eyes bright. Lila handed him a dog biscuit, then leaned into the mic and said, "He didn't just save my life, he saved all of us." Willow Ridge hadn't seen a criminal trial this big in decades. The Crawley case drew everyone, from reporters in tailored blazers to retired veterans who stood outside the courthouse holding American flags. And in the center of it all was a girl, a mother, and a dog. The courtroom was cold that morning, the kind of institutional chill that crept through your clothes and settled deep in your bones. Officer Danielle Ruiz sat straight-backed on the witness bench. Her uniform was perfectly pressed, her voice steady. "Bricks and I were assigned to Willow Ridge Elementary as part of a K9 safety initiative," she said clearly. "He's trained to detect narcotics, chemical threats, and danger to minors." "And did your K9 alert you to a potential threat at the school?" the prosecutor asked. Ruiz didn't blink. "Yes, he alerted us to a lunchbox containing a toxic compound, later confirmed by lab tests as a pesticide. The lunchbox belonged to a 7-year-old girl." Gasps from the courtroom. Crawley didn't flinch. "And in your professional opinion," the lawyer continued, "did you believe this was an accidental contamination?" "No," Ruiz said. "It was deliberate." From the gallery, Jenna Jameson sat with Lila on her lap. The little girl held a stuffed version of Bricks, one paw nearly worn from nervous fidgeting. She didn't understand all the courtroom jargon, but she understood one thing clearly. They were fighting for her. The defense tried to flip the script. Crawley's lead attorney, a silver-haired man with an Ivy League drawl, suggested Ruiz had a personal vendetta, that Bricks's alert was an unreliable trigger, and that everything from the vial in the fountain to the burner phone was circumstantial. But when Travis Dunn took the stand, everything changed. "I swapped the lunchbox," he said quietly. "I didn't know it was poison, not really. I just needed the money." "And who paid you?" the prosecutor asked. He looked down. "Crawley. Through a third party." Then came the voice recording. Crawley's voice, clear, smug, and unmistakable, saying, "She reported me for bruises that were none of her business. Her kid will learn what real pain feels like." Silence. Even the yow Jury flinched. Crawley's lawyer objected. The judge allowed it. The jury wrote notes fast. Outside the courtroom, reporters were already preparing headlines. Father faces justice after attempted poisoning. K9 hero testimony shakes jury in Crawley trial. But something else was coming, something no one expected. The next day, Ruiz received a call from a blocked number. The voice on the other end, soft, nervous. Hi, my name's Evan Crawley. I'm Charles's son. Ruiz sat up straight. Go on. I saw things. Heard things. He made me lie before. But I know what he did to that girl. What he tried to do. Ruiz felt a surge of both dread and hope. Would you testify? A pause. Then, yes. If it means someone like Lila never has to be scared again. In court the next day, Evan Crawley stood tall. 17 years old, dressed in a shirt too big and a tie too tight. He spoke into the mic without looking at his father. My dad taught me that power means never saying sorry, he said. He thought hurting people was how you win. But he was wrong. He looked at the jury, tears in his eyes. And I hope you make him sorry, because I know he never will. Even Crawley looked rattled now. But Ruiz? She felt something break loose in her chest. Not justice, not yet, but possibility. By the end of the week, closing arguments were underway. Ruiz sat outside the courthouse with Bricks, now recovered, though his steps were slower than they'd been weeks before. She scratched behind his ear, eyes scanning the plaza. You know what I've been thinking? She said softly. I don't want to wait around for the next Crawley. Bricks tilted his head. I've spent years reacting. Maybe it's time to build something. Proactive. For kids like Lila. For dogs like you. That's when Jenna walked over. You ever thought about starting a foundation? She asked. Ruiz blinked. Excuse me? You're the reason my daughter is alive. You. And that dog. What if there was a place that trained more Brickses, that taught kids to trust their instincts, that gave mothers like me a place to go when no one listens? Ruiz looked at Bricks, then at Lila skipping near the fountain, free and unafraid. Yeah, she said. I have now. That evening, the verdict came in, guilty, on all counts. Charles Crawley would face a sentence of up to 30 years in federal prison. The courtroom didn't erupt in cheers. There were no celebrations, just quiet tears, and the sound of a little girl whispering, "We did it." A month later, Willow Ridge Elementary had changed. Parents were more involved. Staff training was stronger. And in the corner of the playground, beneath the old oak tree, a new mural had been painted. It showed a German shepherd, black and tan, proud and alert, standing between a child and the shadow of a man. Underneath it read, "Let no threat go unnoticed. Let no child stand alone." And beside the mural, Ruiz unveiled a plaque, the Bricks Foundation for Child Protection and Canine Justice. Lila was the first to donate, $1 and a sticker that said, "Brave like Bricks." Spring had returned to Willow Ridge, and with it came fresh winds, new hope, and something the town hadn't felt in a long time, peace. The schoolyard buzzed with laughter again. Parents no longer lingered nervously at drop-off. The oak tree where it all began had become a meeting place, not a memory of fear. At its base sat a statue of a German shepherd, loyal, strong, eyes carved toward the school as if forever watching. Tayo. Plaque read simply, "Bricks, protector, partner, hero." But the real Bricks? He was still very much alive. Officer Danielle Ruiz stood on the stage of the town hall auditorium, her hand resting on Bricks's back. He wore a new vest, not black, and tactical but navy with a gold badge stitched on the side. Bricks Foundation Ambassador. The room was packed. Parents, teachers, first responders, even students who'd graduated long ago returned for the ceremony. Ruiz spoke into the microphone with her usual calm clarity. When Bricks barked at that lunchbox, none of us knew what we were about to uncover, she said. A plot to harm a child. Corruption in our own backyard. and a town forced to confront the uncomfortable truth that evil can wear a clean shirt and call itself a parent. She looked down at the dog who'd never once failed her. But Brix didn't care about reputations or influence. He smelled danger and he barked, loud, relentless, unapologetically. Laughter rippled through the crowd. And because of that bark, a little girl named Lila is alive today. Applause thundered. Later, Ruiz knelt beside Lila outside near the fountain. The girl was taller now, but her eyes still sparkled the same way they had that first day, when fear had lived in every breath. She fed Brix a slice of apple. "You know what I think?" Lila asked. "I think he talks with his heart." Ruiz smiled. "Yeah? What's he saying now?" "That he's tired of bad people." Ruiz chuckled. "Same." Lila leaned closer. "Are you ever going to retire him?" Ruiz looked out over the school grounds. "That's the thing, Lila. I tried. Gave him rest, a soft bed, toys. He's earned all of it. But every time he hears a backpack zipper or a lunchbox click, his ears perk up. He still listens." Lila tilted her head. "To what?" Ruiz answered softly. "To the things we ignore." Weeks later, Ruiz sat across from Jenna Jameson at the cafe downtown. The Brix Foundation had already received thousands in donations. Trainers were being hired. Schools across the state were requesting canine safety programs. But Ruiz had made a decision, one she hadn't shared until now. "I'm stepping away," she said, stirring her coffee. Jenna blinked. "From what? The force?" Ruiz nodded. 15 years in law enforcement. I've chased traffickers, dealt with gangs, testified in courtrooms, but nothing hit me like that moment in the schoolyard. Nothing taught me more than a child's lunchbox and a barking dog. Jenna looked down. "So what now?" Ruiz reached for the folder beside her. Inside, plans for a national program. "I'm going all in, full-time with the foundation, traveling, speaking, building. There are a lot of schools like Willow Ridge, and not enough Brixes." Jenna smiled. "There's only one Brix." Ruiz nodded slowly. "Maybe. But his spirit, that can live in every hallway, every classroom, in every child who dares to speak up." That night under a clear sky, Ruiz stood alone with Brix in her backyard. He was lying beside her chair, breathing steady, eyes on the stars. She whispered, "We did something good, huh?" His tail wagged once. "I used to think justice lived in courtrooms, in arrests. But maybe justice starts earlier than that. Maybe it's in the moment we notice something off. A lunchbox that's colder than usual. A child too quiet. A dog who won't stop barking." She looked down at him. "You reminded me that silence isn't always peaceful. And noise? Noise can save lives." Months passed. The Brix Foundation expanded across 3 states. Brix and Ruiz visited dozens of schools, training staff and kids, giving demonstrations, teaching people to listen to the instincts they often dismissed. Lila eventually gave a TED-style talk at her middle school titled, "The Bark That Saved." Ruiz watched from the audience, tears quietly filling her eyes. "And Brix?" He barked at the applause. Years later, when Brix passed away peacefully in his sleep, he wasn't just mourned by a town, he was honored by a nation. Flags flew at half-staff. In Willow Ridge, news anchors shared his story with a simple message: one bark, one child, one hero. Final reflection. Maybe we all need to listen more, not just to words, but to what's hidden in the silence, the uneaten sandwich, the lowered eyes, the dog who won't stop barking when everything looks fine, because sometimes the smallest details are warnings, and sometimes the loudest cries for help come without a single word. So ask yourself, what would you do if the dog barked at your child's lunchbox? Would you trust the noise, or wait until it was too late? Thank you for following the story. If this moved you, please subscribe to Brave Animals, where every story reminds us that heroes come in all shapes, and sometimes with 4 paws and a bark that saves a life.